Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Fleet Europe webinar of the virtual Fleet Week. Indeed, it's our fourth webinar that we are organizing during this virtual Fleet Week. My name is Steven Schroefs. I'm the editor-in-chief of Fleet Europe, and I will be your moderator of today, but I will not be the expert speaker. The webinar today is for information purposes only, and if you would like to reproduce some of the content shared in this webinar, then please know that you have to inform us and our partner Octo beforehand, as some of the information is particularly set up for this webinar. So, the virtual Fleet Week is made possible thanks to Octo and also to other partners with which we have organized previous webinars from Monday, and we will continue until tomorrow. You see on your screen that today we are going to talk about fleet security and efficiency standards, how innovative solutions can help the mobility sector. And tomorrow we have the final webinar of this virtual Fleet Week, and there we are going to talk about EV implementation with a case study of SAP. But let's focus on today's webinar. So we will talk about innovative solutions. We have the support of one of the most important, biggest technology companies across the globe, Octo. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you the two expert speakers of today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Corey O'Brien. As you see on the screen, he is the global OEM stream leader at Octo, and he will be assisted by Edwin Colelia, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Octo. They will do a presentation first, and afterwards there is a Q&A like we always doing. There is a Q&A where you can ask your questions to the experts. So if you have a question during the presentation of Corey and Edwin, then please send your question via the chat function of the GoToWebinar tool. And at the end of the webinar, I will try to moderate a nice Q&A together with our experts. So let's kick off. And I would like to welcome our guest stars of today, Corey O'Brien and Edwin Colelia. Hello, gentlemen. I hope that you are doing fine. Thank you very much for the support during the virtual Fleet Week. We are really glad that Octo is also involved in everything that is related, of course, to connectivity on the one hand and electrification and innovation on the other. And we are looking forward to a great webinar together with you. So the floor is yours, gentlemen. And I think that, Corey, you are going to kick off.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate the introduction. Yeah, as he said, we're going to talk today about innovative solutions in the mobility sector. So you can go ahead to move to the first slide. An interesting topic, of course, given that nearly every part of our life today has been completely changed. From the way we're interacting right now, today, which is obviously new, to the way we're interacting with the world and technology around us. We might have new rules in society now, but we're already adapting at a great pace. Technology, connectivity have reached unprecedented levels during the pandemic, not only from online webinars like we find ourselves now, but the connectivity that we're using at work, which is probably at home, in our vehicles, at the grocery store or grocery delivery, package delivery, even schools where my girls are doing remote learning now. I mean, our beloved sports teams are even playing games with no fans, right? So the risk level is high. We all understand that, but our desire to get back to normal also is very high, which means we need to find ways to innovate, to come up with solutions to get our lives and our business back again. We need to evolve and disrupt so we can begin to thrive again. We have to embrace this attitude of evolution, not only in our personal lives, but also, of course, in our business lives too. Next. So now we're going to talk about trends that we're seeing in the mobility space today. It somewhat breaks my heart as a car guy, but a recent report shows 40% of the new generation of drivers aren't even thinking about buying a vehicle. They don't want to own a vehicle. I mean, they're shifted already in their mindset to shared mobility. And this happens even now when there's a slowdown of these services during a pandemic. People are moving outside of urban areas given their work situations. And still, we know these services are going to be part of the future of mobility. They'll be back. The old transportation model wasn't working prior to 2020, prior to the pandemic. But this has just been a catalyst to help move us forward faster. Some basic ideas have been in place for a long time with respect to city infrastructure and transportation. For example, how we manage the inflow in low emission zones in cities like London. But these ideas aren't complete enough. They weren't before the pandemic. They were outdated then, and they need to be more comprehensive. So, autonomy will be one of those solutions that comes to help us in the mobility future. We're already seeing signs, though, that this is less accepted by people. One study I recently saw said over 75% of people don't yet trust the technology. It's even being adopted now slower than it was even just 1 year ago. Of course, we know this is coming. It's going to be a part of our transportation future. But it's just not clear yet how, or even more importantly, when. Shared mobility as a whole needs to leverage different technologies. Hydrogen, natural gas type propulsion technologies are great. Electric vehicles are moving faster than ever. We see customers now that want their cars to do more, electric vehicles to do more than even the cars of today. They want them to have the same comforts. They want them to have obviously good range, but connectivity, performance, this overall experience, they want it to be even better than what they've known to this point. So they want it to be more engaging, more delightful to drive, more exciting. And obviously, this then is starting to create this trend where our cars become a status symbol again. It seems odd. This is somewhat in conflict with the first bullet, where they're not really interested in owning them, but they really still want to be experiencing them and be a part of high technology in their vehicles. And so we know that if manufacturers don't adapt and create this technology and bring it into a very personal experience in vehicles, they're not going to succeed in the future. They'll be left behind. Next slide. Now we talk a little bit about multimodal mobility. It still has a pretty low acceptance in many countries, especially like where I'm at in the US, where we don't have adoption of more than maybe 2 modes to reach a destination. That challenge isn't really being talked about much in terms of what the future of public transportation looks like. But mostly people are unsure about multimodal mobility because we expect that it's going to change the entire approach to how we use transportation. Data, however, is going to be this beacon that we need to follow. It's going to help us solve this problem. It's going to be kind of this enabler to change in the mobility space. Data from individuals to each different component of the transportation system, all this interconnectivity, it's going to help these city managers to get a valid set of information from all these many different sources and better organize in their role to create this transportation ecosystem. And it must all work together to support our goal of Vision Zero, which of course, as we've thought about it mostly till now, it's even gaining traction in the US actually now, which is exciting. But this has really traditionally been about zero congestion, zero crashes, zero pollution. And obviously this is well known globally. But what we're now seeing is this fourth pillar where we need to take into account the health and safety of the individuals that are using such transportation. The paradox is that mobility has always been intended to kind of support and transport humans to a life that's better, whether that's a social or economic perspective of moving you to work or places you need to go. But today, in reality, it somewhat represents pollution, congestion, accidents, of course. And then now recently, it's also having an impact on our health just to use transportation to get us to work, for example. But how can that be, and what can we do about it? Well, it's because we've used less intelligence, less data than what's available. Today, we have access to analytics and data about each individual component and are able to stitch this together in an ecosystem of data that can help us understand and contribute to a better and new Vision Zero. We need to use the data we collect to reduce the emissions from cars, to involve government in the conversation for mandating distracted driving features and reducing accidents. At a minimum, we can at least reduce injury or severe injury from accidents, or use telematics to speed up the time at which we can respond to people that are in need during these accidents. It's all very possible. We know the trends, we know the challenge, and intelligent telematics is the best way to reach Vision Zero. Next. As we talked a little bit earlier about shared mobility services that have existed, they've been available for several years now, but the focus has mainly been on large cities, big urban kind of areas like downtown London, for example, or Chicago. What hasn't been taken into account with these services and this transportation method is the full complexity of the mobility space that is moving people from remote areas into large cities with this very complex frequency and many different modes of transportation. And because of the focus of these services being within the big cities, they're not really contributing to the challenge of greater mobility and access. So we need to rethink how we address this inner city transportation, this rural transportation, or even small budget transportation. Of course, we're now all dispersed and no longer necessarily having to be in the big city every day for work. And so we need to be familiar with different approaches to transportation. We know the reality of today's shared mobility is that it's priced somewhere between a taxi and a rental car, which therefore represents pretty much the highest cost for transportation. So how do we make that more accessible, more affordable? Mobility is distributed in kind of, if you go back just one more second, mobility is distributed in both time and geography, and that's kind of what we're showing here, right? As people now have come outside the city for work and not having to go in every day, the delivery distribution network has to change and be adapted. So no longer is large trucks making a central delivery into the corridors within the heart of the cities, but instead now you need multiple vans, different solutions that are able to have different distribution points on the outskirts of the city to reach the more rural areas. And I'm sure if you've been using some of these services through the pandemic like I have, I want things delivered to me during the day. And I want maybe there to be flexibility on the time and not have to be constrained to one particular time. I mean, I'm working from home, and so you want to be able to have flexibility, and that means that the ecosystem around me is going to have to adapt. Okay. So the challenges we face today are big, but they're definitely achievable. The old transportation model is not sustainable. It already wasn't prior to the pandemic. this has just been kind of the catalyst to drive this change more quickly and more globally. Social interactions are changed forever, and we need to innovate in order to get us back to a new normal. This perception of risk is very important and evident today. For example, in ride sharing, there really isn't some golden ticket that's going to get us out of this pandemic immediately. But the perception has to be that there's a tangible solution that's going to enable us to use these types of transportation again and to use them quickly as the demand is there and the change is occurring. Tangible solutions that we develop will allow our businesses to restart and the economy to get back to normal. So the change is inevitable. We have to embrace disruptive solutions or be destined to fail if we don't. And so on the next slide, we'll start to talk about what are some of these solutions, go ahead, that address the challenges that we've spoken about so far in mobility. So on the left side, we have examples of individual type solutions. That means sanitization type products, safety and security or insurance, predictive maintenance for your fleets or vehicles, loyalty programs, mobile apps, and billing payment services. All of these have a place in the mobility space today and can make a great impact in their own way, sometimes modularly, sometimes built into a bigger solution. On the right, we can see where we can apply these technology solutions. For example, shared mobility on the top, like we've talked about, or even government or industry, insurance companies or hospitals. Even emergency response providers can get more data or leverage these analytics or data to help them do their role more easily. So the need of all these groups, of course, vary, but there are common threads, with technology being at the center of the disruptive change that's coming throughout our ecosystem. Together, we kind of have this octo end-to-end platform solution that enables us to solve problems as we desire to bring back mobility solutions and meet the demands of our customers. Data, analytics, and connectivity are the common thread that we can use to meet the challenges that we've introduced today. Okay, next. So two important potential solutions in the mobility space. For example, the Octo Pure Play solution. This is an in-vehicle sanitization device that's used to clean the air and surfaces in your vehicle. So this sanitizer uses patents developed by NASA and photocatalytic oxidation technology to reduce up to 99% of impurities in the air, including destroying harmful bacteria, viruses, allergens, even other particles down to 0.003 microns. And it does this by using a catalyst within the device to actually emit out into the air particles that can attack carbon-based molecules. You can use this purifier in a vehicle as a standalone device, like a traditional purifier, and you can manually activate purification cycles. We can also integrate it as part of our platform and use our telematics device. We call it Smart Diag. And this can be used to connect the vehicle into the vehicle network to the sanitizer and get traditional vehicle health information or fleet management services, but also enable remote sanitization via a telematic service through a mobile app. So imagine, for example, you want to use a shared mobility service. The vehicle has an Octo Pure Play sanitizer on board, and when you go into the mobile app, it actually tells you and indicates while you're booking a ride that that particular vehicle has a sanitizer on board and has run a sanitization cycle. You at least have some peace of mind and more comfort knowing the healthy environment in the vehicle that awaits you. So hopefully this type of technology could be a safer way to restarting usage of shared mobilities It's used today in buildings, medical clinics, and hospitals. We can integrate this into the ventilation system of public transportation vehicles or even cars. Smart Keyless is another solution by Octo that enables a contactless, keyless rental and car sharing solution. So again, we use our OBD connected smart diag device to connect into the vehicle network. And then the smart keyless is a Bluetooth enabled key that is a clone of the original equipment key. So when you're using your mobile app, it connects to the vehicle, to the key, unlocks the vehicle, and the key is actually validated through the reservation that you made, and then activated, and enabling you to, of course, then start your car. So our solution here enables customers to make a mobile reservation, enter the vehicle, start and stop the vehicle without ever engaging a person, completely contactless. Of course, our solution at Octo also manages the end-to-end rental process. So that means rental initiation, driver license validation, all the way to Octo Smart Keyless to enter the vehicle. And then, of course, we can close the reservation and conduct the billing and payment solution. And hey, if you had an Octo Pure Place device on board, you can even automatically run a sanitization cycle after the rental period ends, so that you know the vehicle is clean and safe for your next customer. All integrated into one platform, kind of in a modular or integrated way. Next slide. Now we'll talk about some solutions for industry, like the Mobility Atlas solution. Here we kind of treat cars essentially as mobility sensors, allowing us to visualize valuable data about how vehicles and people are moving, or even monitor kind of the clusters of where vehicles are located. This was a valuable tool that countries like Italy used during the pandemic, where we tracked the movement of vehicles, or even were able to track kind of the decline in transportation usage during lockdown. Anonymization and privacy by design are, of course, standard for all the data and statistics representations that we're using with our Octo Mobility Atlas toolchain. It's an effective what-if decision-making tool that enables us to reshape mobility based on true data and analytics available throughout the transportation ecosystem, with both individuals via their cell phones and the mobility transportation system. A smart fleet telematics solution, Octo Fleet Telematics, of course, is a critical component for any fleet management. Today, maybe more than ever, managers need this contactless process for managing their fleet, like we just talked about, but then, of course, also need to ensure fleet efficiency and safety, not to mention typical asset management in a very difficult business climate for this sector. From the keyless solutions we just talked about to deep vehicle diagnostics, we have a complete telematics suite for shared mobility. We also integrate services from our insurance business sector so that we can help fleet managers understand risk management or crash and claim services. We also enable fleets to better understand the value of their vehicles based on how they are used and how they are maintained. So we can get to a point where we understand a vehicle's usage or stress so well that we can actually determine whether or not it would be more profitable if you should take a vehicle that's been highly utilized, maybe even abused, and swap it earlier than normal to give a less utilized vehicle. At that point, you can then balance the value of both of those vehicles to optimize profitability for everybody. Powerful solutions that we can use to address fleet and mobility. And lastly, we'll talk about, on the next slide, our Octo digital driver solution. This is the smart tag that attaches to the vehicle windshield and houses an accelerometer and Bluetooth connection. and communicates to our mobile app to assess driver behavior and enable proactive coaching. Our drivability scoring service, of course, utilizes secure and anonymized driver data to provide pay-as-you-go, pay-how-you-drive insurance type policies to the marketplace. We have over 18 years of experience that have enabled us to refine our crash and bump algorithms to help meet the needs of insurers and rental providers so they know what's happened to the vehicle, but more importantly, they can ensure safety and security for their customer by automatically sending help, for example, during an accident when a driver might be injured and unable to make the call themselves. We're aggregating data from our tag, mobile phone, connected vehicle devices, even the embedded manufacturer modem, and then trying to connect this further to the ecosystem with real data, not an analog connection stream, but sending real data to where it's usable and can make the most impact. Of course, we offer this again as an end-to-end platform or in modular ways where sometimes we only have one component that's needed to integrate for crash and claims, for example. So hopefully it's been insightful for you today. I tried to offer a view on how we can leverage innovative solutions from multiple sources to not only enable our vision zero, but also the future of mobility and how we get back to normal. But not only back to normal, let's get back to a new and better normal. So Stephen, Edwin, and I are here if you have any questions, but thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Thank you very much. And I invite also Edwin Colelia, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Octo, in this Q&A. If you have a question regarding the presentation, then please send it via the chat function, as we will now start the little Q&A together with Corey and Edwin. There are already a few questions that are coming in, so that is really nice. Perhaps a first question for Edwin Colelia. Edwin, Corey was mentioning in the beginning of his presentation that data will support the transition to efficient mobility. Now, we still see that many people and also many companies are a little bit scared of big data. How do you see that, and what can we do to overcome that fear?
Yeah, thank you for this question, Stephen. First of all, this is a big change, so it is normal and very, let's say, understandable that there are some fears around this kind of approach. I first of all evidence the fact that the European and American legislation specifically, but in general in the global scope, every country in every region has already adopted scheme to protect with the maximum degree of, let's say, protection the consumers, the drivers, in order to be sure that these data are used for the right purposes and only for the purposes that is allowed by the driver. So the ownership of the data is always in the hand of the driver, and she decides to use or to share this data for a specific and unique need, which might be a security need, a crash, which might be a mobility need, the flow of traffic, which might be a need of having instruction to avoid distraction while driving, or instruction or suggestion to have a better driving attitude to reduce consumption and reduce pollution. So there is always a consent specific for one or more specific utilization in order to prevent any misuse of the data. And this is generally very much related to the specific data of a single individual and a single vehicle used. So I believe that we are in this context in 2020 in the good way to be sure to use in the best way possible without any misuse the data and to protect privacy and other elements requested by each driver.
Okay, thank you. Question for Corey, and the question is related to, let's say, the shared mobility services. With the proliferation of car sharing and ride sharing companies like Uber or Enjoy, can't we say that we are already in the new era of mobility?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the services that you mentioned have been around for quite some years now, but as I kind of mentioned in the presentation, they're really addressing just still this small segment of the market. And so we need to get a more comprehensive view of how we can use these services more in the rural areas, and more importantly, I think, in the lower end of the pricing range. So we need to have people that rely on bus transportation be able to afford to use shared mobility. So Edwin, I don't know if you have anything to add, but that's my biggest thought.
I completely agree on this vision and this view, and I would only add that we need to have some dreams in a way. We normally in the company speaks about vision and the future, but because this is impacting heavily our communities, organization, countries, regions, and the entire world, we need to have some dreams. A much more distributed, much more efficient, much more safer mobility is one objective that the entire population needs to achieve, and step by step, the organization, the companies, the fleet managers, each individual might contribute to these final results.
Okay, it's quite interesting what you are saying, and perhaps I'm wrong, but I see also that mobility providers are often having some kind of difficulties in terms of, let's say, yes, being sustainable, being, let's say, cost beneficial. At the moment, you are saying that to make mobility a success, the industry should be able to even make it accessible from, let's say, to enter the mobility services on a wider perspective with at a lower price probably and in rural areas. Will that not be almost impossible or difficult if you see that already today? I don't think that there are so many car sharing or ride hailing providers that are really making good money.
I would say that any transformation that is changing the way we behave and with the technology innovating a specific sector, being this telecom with the mobile phones or stream entertainment with the stream services like Netflix and many others, Prime Video and many others, is demonstrating that things and processes and technologies that have at the beginning a very high price and a very complex structure in terms of processes might be disrupted and might be available to the broader number of people and with lower prices, just to make sure that this become a commodity in a way, or in any case, something that might be defined as a mass market product or service. So now we are in this transition moment, and what we see is exactly what you, Stephen, have evidenced: complexity, struggling with processes, technologies, struggling with the utilization of the vehicle, the way the vehicle is used in the different area of a city, how to make sure to have the best efficiency between the demand and the offer of the vehicles. We have peaks where we do not find the vehicles in car sharing, for example, and other moments where this, during which these vehicles are available in the totality and they are not used. So the efficiency and the technology together, and obviously based on data, based on analytics, based on also on many of our technologies and solutions that we offer to our customers, business partners, might be helping a lot in reducing the overall cost of these services, transferring a better service with a better pricing towards communities. And I believe that one of the most relevant examples that so far we have been with you, Stephen, in different situations, meeting the companies that are providing mobility as a service solutions. They are obviously struggling to enter in different markets from, for example, the Scandinavian market where they are very present for many reasons, including legislation, including normal, let's say, process and organization rule in some countries. But this is a step forward in a way to promote and distribute a mass market approach in terms of mobility solutions. Today, there are many actors, fragmented, very fragmented. The intermodal between public buses, underground, vehicle sharing, and scooter sharing is practically impossible. It is decided by the user, by the individual. We always decide to be intermodal in our choices, but it's practically inefficient in terms of solution, in terms of mobile app, in terms of offering. Every company that is playing in this sector is doing just one fraction of my needs. So an entire vision that is much more integrated and takes into account my needs on daily basis for commuting, for travel and work needs, and my needs during the weekends for entertainment, my needs for transportation and mobility during the holidays are belonging to me as an individual. And today I have a plethora of different companies offering these services in a very dishomogeneous and not integrated way. So think how this can be changed in the next years, hopefully for the benefit of everybody, in order to have a comprehensive view and a comprehensive solution enabled by technology, hopefully ours, but in any case, enabled in a way that is giving to the end user the most higher level of value and the most easiness of utilization.
Okay, there's a question about the products of Octo that you have presented. I'm going to read the question. The customer already has a car sharing platform that he or she is using. He or she would like to know if you offer the devices you talked about also in a standalone setup so that they can be connected directly to another platform, or is that not possible?
Corey, may I take this, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think they've heard enough from me.
As said, this is not true. Very impressive presentation, Corey. So as Corey has said, we have, yes, an end-to-end solution, complete and usable to launch in a very short time, a complete and fully operating vehicle sharing service. But at the same time, our modules, which are completing the solution, are available also as self-modules, specifically the purification devices and the associated telematics component, which grants reporting, control, and many other features remotely from the fleet manager, is available also to be integrated in current fleet using different technology for their vehicle sharing services. Yes.
Okay, perfect. We are, of course, living the pandemic, and we hope, of course, that in a few months' time, there is good news and there can be a vaccine that is available for the complete community. Do you think that once that we have that vaccine, that we will really go back to normal and to life also in mobility as we knew it before?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, and Edwin, you can add in your thoughts. But of course, I think we all hope we have a solution very soon, and we can start to go back to life as we used to know it in some way. But I think the fear is the world is so connected and things are so fast now. You can be on a plane across the world in half the day. And so we are going to see more instances, I think, of this occurring, and we are going to have to we're going to have to be proactive and finding ways that we can address issues like viruses in this way so that we don't get back to this situation again. So yeah, I think and I hope that we are going to see normality return soon, but it's never, I think, going to go back completely to the way we had it.
Okay, Edwin, I would like to know from you, because we see, of course, that there has been and there is still a pressure on mobility services, for example, in car sharing or in public transport. Do you think that once we have that vaccine, that services like that will pick up again?
At least in a few countries today, with the availability of car sharing and scooter sharing where available, the availability has compensated a lot of the need of having a higher social distancing in public buses and other kind of public transportation, because obviously the reduction of number of passengers has impacted the needs of mobility, and in a way these kind of services have been used. I believe that today the most relevant issues are for short renting companies, so which they are normally used to offer their services in station nearby rail station or airports for business and leisures needed. And we are all, as we are currently, in virtual meetings, traveling a lot less, and this is obviously impacting them. But at the same time, I believe, as Corey has said at the beginning, that mobility has always been one of the most powerful, let's say, attitudes, habits of the humanity to make step forwards in our development. So this is only a matter of a short pause compared to the long life of mobility. And hopefully very soon, everything will be back as before, with a much more let's say, control of the sanification and the clinic that was already a huge, let's say, process and a huge need, and also a huge activity of the operators, but it will be different in the future, much more complete, taking into account, as said by Corey, different aspects, but at the same time, this will give us, again, back to normal for the mobility and specifically for the short renting companies.
Okay, perfect. Another question that came in is related to the fact of mobility on one hand is global, is international, everyone needs mobility, but of course it's, and Edwin, you also underlining it, it's very fragmented. You don't have in each and every city, in each and every country, the same solutions. You have a multitude of players, and probably trust is one of the most important elements in not only building the overall mobility solutions, but also for the acceptance of the public. What is your vision and your, let's say, key message in building that trust?
First of all, obviously, the decision of following or taking a specific transportation mean is normally a decision of 30 seconds to 1 minute, which is the decision where when you need it in a specific moment, this transportation needs, or a decision of 15 minutes when you have to plan something for the next days, for a travel or for something specific. And during this period, the awareness and the consideration of the availability of the services is one of the most relevant parts. So the more we will be aware of what is available and the flexibility and the capacity of these operator of these services to answer to our need, the most, let's say, efficient this will be, and our decision will be going in this direction. In terms of trust, the quality of the services and the reliability of the data, the information in terms of reservation, in terms of payments, in terms of billing, in terms of real utilization of the vehicle, so without overheads, without additional cost, transparent prices, flexible prices are the most, let's say, elements that are needed in order to build trust into the users. We need, let's say, players in the technology in this sector to offer tools that make sure that the user knows at the beginning the amount that will be paying afterwards, which might be depending on the traffic, on the timing, on the utilization, but at least he knows very clearly how much he will pay for it. Because normally when you take a flight or a train, you normally know exactly how much you will pay for it at the beginning, before taking the train. When you take a taxi, at least in the European cities, you don't know actually how much you will pay at the end. You have plenty of information, normally a list with 5, 10, 20 lines of pricing. But at the end, if you are using this taxi in any moment and you are the first time using this taxi, probably you don't know how much you will pay at the end. So this kind of transparency, this kind of very simple kind of information that allows me to take the better decision based on my needs and then the pricing and other factors are obviously very relevant. And one of these factors is the cleaning, the sanitization of the vehicle, the interior of the vehicle, being this in vehicle sharing or a taxi or a professional driver or an Uber services. I want to be treated in a way that is the best way possible for an individual that is taking a car that is shared or a ride that is shared among other passengers or other users. I don't want to find something that is not clean, accessories that are not working. So in my personal opinion, awareness, quality of the service, and very transparent information about pricing and service level provided.
Okay. One of the industries, of course, that during the pandemic has known lots of success is everything that is related to e-commerce and home delivery. Now, Corey, I would like to know from you, how does the explosion, let's say, of home delivery services impact your vision for the future around efficient mobility?
Yeah, so I think they're getting very good very fast, I will say. They adapted extremely quickly to the demand that exploded for them. But they're going to have to now make sure they optimize their operations that they've put together so quickly. So how do you manage a fleet of these maybe smaller vans that have now had to expand their delivery into new rural areas that didn't have such popularity for that service before? How do you understand uptime and how to keep those vehicles running much more often than what they had to run before? I think these will be challenges that they're going to have to work through as they optimize their business to offer flexibility in service, where it's not just one small fixed time or window when you can use the service, but yet you have flexibility to get it throughout the day. You can pick up something same day or next day, things like that. So I think they grew very rapidly and very successfully, and now they're going to get into this optimization phase.
Okay.
And probably,
yes.
Stephen, sorry, Corey, to add something also on the perspective of the drivers, also better and much more safer driving, giving driving behavior and driving habits or suggestion to reduce accident, as obviously many of these drivers have been involved with a shorter period of training. And at the same time, the demand is so high that needs to be also faster. So obviously the logistics needs to be faster, but not too fast in order to avoid accident and crashes. So also very much controlling in a way the possibility to have better driving will be also an additional element personally.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I understand also, both of you correctly, based on the presentation and the comments that you have given in the Q&A, we can, let's say, be quite sure that also after the pandemic, in the new normal, all aspects related to the sanitization of vehicles or mobility modes or safety elements like your keyless technology and so on are technologies and are services that will have a sustainable future even in the new normal. We will keep paying attention to those kinds of services because these will help us in overcoming some kind of hurdles that we might have in using different mobility modes. Is that correct?
This is what I think. And every transformation is both a change in the game and a step-by-step set of moves to go further. And today we are exactly in this moment for the mobility. And I believe that there are many of the solutions that we are offering and many others that we have in our pipeline and roadmap that might transform completely the way the mobility services are offered to the end driver and the passengers today.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We will end this webinar here. I would like to thank you for the insights given. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Edwin. And thank you,
Stephen.
Octo, for the support. In this virtual Fleet Week. Ladies and gentlemen, I can already tell you that there will be a recorded version of this webinar that will be shared on fleeteurope.com and also pushed via our social media. So if you would like to relive the highlights of this webinar, this is possible in the upcoming days. And then finally, I would like you to also attend the final webinar of this virtual Fleet Week. That's tomorrow. It is with the support of Webfleet Solutions, but the main part will be how to implement electric vehicles in your corporate fleet with a case study of SAP. And also tomorrow, there will be the second virtual fleet launch together with Link & Co. Thank you very much for your attention and hope to see you at a future event of Fleet Europe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Stephen. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.